Folks, we are now live. This is the House Democratic Caucus on February 7th, 2023. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for all of you for being here today. We have not too many things on the schedule, but I do have some announcements. And I don't have any bill reports, but there will be time after the second thing I'm going to do after announcements. There will be time for if you want to announce bills that you are looking for co-sponsors on. So we'll do that at the very end. After announcements. Please make sure that you are here in the building to do that. Speaking of floor, we have the same schedule next week. It will be this week and next week. For the next 2 weeks, it will be as it was today, 10, 3, 3, and 9:30. That schedule will be the same next week. But do remember that's going to change probably. Those 3 o'clock ones will go earlier soon. Let's see, bill sign outs. I know you've heard me say this before, but I'm going to just say it again. When you're doing paper sign outs, make sure that the folks who are signing onto your legislation, they are putting their name right beside their own and clearly, not halfway up to the next one or halfway down to the other one. There has been some confusion about whether people are signing right beside there. So no sloppy sign-ons to your bills. Make sure they're very clear, and also no post-it notes stuck to them with somebody's name. Has to be done very clearly and simply. Do this for our staff. They're working really hard to meet our needs. So just ask for your support on that piece. Okay, so the last thing, just wanted to mention that on Thursday, February 16th at 10:30 a.m., we're going to do our joint assembly. This is to elect a sergeant at arms and to elect 3 UVM trustees. I was told this morning, and it's true, this is going to take a little while. So expect this to go to lunch on that day, maybe even into lunch a little bit. So just be prepared on the 16th to be longer floor time for the joint assembly. Okay. And speaking of the UVM trustees, we have the 4 candidates who are running here in the room with us, and I'm going to call on them as individual folks. They'll come up to the podium here and do a little intro and say why they're running. And then they are each going to leave because they're going to go to the Republican caucus as well. So we're going to cycle through them. We won't offer time for questions. If you have questions of these candidates, though, please reach out to them. You have an email from them in your inboxes, in your Ledge email. So feel free to reach out to them individually with any questions you may have. Okay, so I'm going to start out with the first candidate, Shab Smith.
It's great to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. Just briefly about me, I am originally from Elmore and Wolcott, Vermont. I graduated from People's Academy, which is in Morrisville, in 1983, so I'm kind of old. And I went to the university. I was lucky enough to be a Vermont Merit Scholar, which meant that I got my tuition free at UVM, and it was something set up by the university to try to make sure that students that were being recruited by other institutions who were really successful had the opportunity to go to the university as well. I took some time away. I was in Indiana for a little while for law school, and then spent some time in New York City, and then moved back to Vermont in the early 90s, where I started working at Dinsey, Knapp and McAndrew at that time, or Erdman and Clapp at that time, now the Dinsey law firm, and I've been there for 30 years. My wife and I returned to Lamoille County in the late 90s, where we've raised our 2 children. one of whom is actually now a junior at the University of Vermont, and our daughter, who has made it very clear that she will not go to the University of Vermont, and she will go anywhere that will cost us as much as possible. Which gets me to some of the themes I want to talk about. As a parent who has had the opportunity to have a son go to UVM and as a daughter who's going to likely go somewhere else, I am very, very cognizant of the cost of higher education and how that's a barrier. And not only am I cognizant of it because of my own experiences with my kids, but also I coach Nordic skiing. And so I spend a lot of time with high school students who are thinking about where they might want to go. And so frequently they feel their choices are constrained by the cost of higher education. And one of the things that I've really worked as somebody who's been on the board for the last 6 years is to emphasize the importance to the administration of how we need to figure out a way to keep college affordable for both Vermonters, but also out-of-staters. One thing I want to say, and I realize I only have 3 minutes, we have to be careful though in how we do that. We can't have it be completely on the backs of the people who are working at the university. We need to make sure that we have a vibrant faculty and staff, because that's really the faculty, staff, and the students are the lifeblood of the institution. And if we don't invest in all of them, then we're not going to have a successful institution. The final thing I'll say, and I'll invite you to email me or call me to discuss particular issues, but the institution of University of Vermont has to be an institution that serves all of Vermont. It does in many respects, and then it fails in others. But if you look around and think about the needs that we have, educators, nurses, doctors, people in the agricultural field, the university, along with the state colleges, has to be part of the solution to making sure that we have people in Vermont who can work, live, educate, treat patients, be our nursing staff. That has to be part of what our mission is, and it has to be throughout the entire state. We do that as a university. We could always do better, and that is something that I will continue to focus on as a trustee. So I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you. I know that time is precious. I'll just say, I want to thank all of you for the service that you provided. I hadn't been on the floor when the floor was in session since I left as speaker. And it was really wonderful to see you all there doing the work for all Vermonters. So thank you.
Thank you, Speaker Smith. Okay. Do you want to come next? Okay. Representative Tristan Tolino will be up next.
Good morning. Thank you. Tristan Tolino, and I'm one of the 3 reps from Brattleboro for those of you who I have not yet had a chance to meet. It's very interesting to be in appropriations when we're all in the building together and to see all of the new faces and to realize that we're in like a parallel universe. And I've been trying really hard to get out of that little bubble and to find you all in the halls. And I will continue to do that this week, but please do grab me if you see me and you have questions about why I'm running or thoughts that you want to share about UVM as an institution. Very quickly, background, some leadership. I think some of this is in my email, so I apologize if I'm repeating it. I'm from Marlboro, Vermont, went to high school in Brattleboro, 1989. I'm old, but not quite as old as Shep. I was a chef for 25 years, so I I had an interesting path. I went to a liberal arts college out of state, was a philosophy and religion major, and then decided I wanted to cook. And so I went to NECI, got an associate's degree after a BA. That's very expensive, by the way, if you do it that way. And cooked professionally for a number of years. And along the way, started to get very interested in the local food systems questions. And I did a lot of work with youth and farm to school work, and ended up going to Marlborough as a grad student and getting my MBA in a sort of a green MBA, but nonetheless a full MBA. And so I have developed myself as a financial person as well, sort of post MBA. And that's something that I do think I bring to the board, is both our version of that in appropriations, but also, the business background and the financial acumen. And I catered for a while, ran a restaurant for 11 years, tons of employees. And then eventually I started working in Marlborough in the grad program. And so I've worked in higher ed as both an adjunct professor, as a part-time administrator. Eventually, when Marlborough closed, I was serving as the director of our graduate and professional program. So I have some idea of how higher ed works. So I also have served one term on the UVM board. I ran for re-election 2 years ago. The bodies chose 3 different candidates, and I really sat with the question.
We'll shoot for Tuesday, so it's 9 to 10.
Needs.
So David.
Where's that sound coming from? Is that me? Oh, okay. I was like, am I doing that? I waited, and I also wanted to see who else was running. And I've been really thinking about this for 2 years. And what I know about UVM is one of the most important institutions in the state. Just straight up. It's important everywhere. There are 100,000 alumni or more from the university. There are hundreds and hundreds of alums in every one of our legislative districts. Its research impact is something that is fundamentally important to our Vermont future. And frankly, I think only in the last few years, as the institution really figured out how important it is to sort of make it easier for that impact to reach all of Vermont. I'm an executive coach and a business and organizational development coach, consultant now. I'm fearless in speaking truth to power. One of the things that our public trustees do is we provide balance for the private trustees and the students. We have a statewide perspective. We bring our geography, our lived experience, but we have to be able to communicate that, and communicate that with, honesty and integrity and some strengths, a little bit of a backbone. And I have done that, and I can do that again. And I think with that, I could go on for a long time, but I appreciate your consideration. I think we have a wonderful slate of candidates, and it's really important for us to pay attention to this institution, not just at election time, but always. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Toledo. Representative Bartholomew.
I can't really talk anywhere without using notes. Sorry about that. So anyway, this is a really exciting opportunity to run for re-election for the UVM Board of Trustees. I did send out a letter describing some of the achievements and stuff about myself. Hopefully you can find it somewhere buried in the hundreds of messages you have in your inbox. A little bit about my background. I grew up in a Navy family, so I kind of lived all over the place, places like Virginia, Florida, California, Hawaii, Colorado. And when my father retired, I ended up in Oklahoma. And I studied zoology and botany at the University of Oklahoma, and then went on to study veterinary medicine at Oklahoma State University. I had an Air Force scholarship to veterinary school, so I had military service, ended up in Turkey for a while, and in Maryland. And I have a specialty in laboratory animal medicine. So after I left the military, I ended up at NIH. I spent 19 years at NIH, which is, as you probably know, the foremost biomedical research institution in the world. I was at National Cancer Institute, and then I became a public health service officer and was at National Institute of Child Health and Human Development as a branch chief. When I moved to Vermont, I got this part-time job in the legislature. I represent I'm from Heartland and represent also Windsor and West Windsor. And this is my 7th biennium. I've been on the Agriculture and Forestry Committee. I was 5 bienniums there, and Transportation Committee for the last 2 bienniums, and also on the Rules Committee. So I've got background in sciences, veterinary medicine, biomedical research, public health, but also agriculture, financial management, and music, theater, and humanities. So I bring quite a broad array of experiences to the board. UVM is really an impressive organization, and I wrote in my letter some of the achievements that I'm proud of that we've had over the last several years. Why am I running? Education is a real passion of mine. A good education has really provided me with a career path and opportunities that I never could have had without education. There's a lot more to be done with the trustees. We have real challenges in providing adequate student, not only mostly enough housing for students. We need to find a way to raise funds. The costs for construction have really escalated, and we need to do something about the multipurpose center at UVM. There's a lot of deferred maintenance we have to deal with. The recurring theme you've heard is the cost of education. We need to control the cost of room, board, tuition, fees. We've managed to freeze tuition for the past 5 years, but UVM still is general. It's in terms of comparing it to private schools, it's on the lower end of the spectrum. But when you look at the public schools, we are really one of the most expensive. So we've got to do something about that. And I had my own sticker shock when my daughter Marta went there to UVM. So UVM is about building futures and giving students the skills they need. It would be a real honor and a privilege to go back and serve another term. So contact me if you have any questions, concerns, thoughts to share about UVM. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bartholomew. And finally, Representative Monique Priestley.
Hey everybody, Monique Priestley from Orange to Bradford Fairleigh, West Fairleigh, and I'm also a newbie, so still getting to know everybody. I had a whole speech, but I distilled it into a sticky note. Just starting off, this was not a position that I even knew as a newbie was an opportunity, and was very excited. I was asked to put in my name. I don't know if it's because I generally just don't seek seats of power. It takes somebody asking me. I don't know if it's because I'm a woman or young, but I am called to service. So when I'm asked to step into a board seat, I've been on 24 different boards. And in each case, it was because people asked me to dedicate my skills, dedicate my time. And this is no different. So my relevant kind of like background professionally is that I work for an educational software company. And so I every week talk with deans, IT directors, marketing directors, program staff, and really just kind of hear all of the challenges that they have in recruiting students in today's world, especially with like online education and things like that. My personal side of things, and often why I think I'm asked to run for different seats, is because I'm a super fan of collaboration and just innovation. So some of you know that in my hometown in Bradford, there was an empty department store that I ended up kind of like, it was super depressing. I was trying to decide whether or not to stay in Vermont, move to Seattle where my software job is, and ended up working with a whole network of different people to turn that into a community co-working space that has served 20,000 people in the last 4 years. And that is just continued. During COVID, our EMS people did not know how to engage with the public in the 10 different towns surrounding us. So I stood up kind of a resilience program. It was kind of a mutual aid that brought in select boards, schools, churches, medical institutions, just community members who are interested in helping out. So that is like how I approach problems, is just making sure that all of the people, the stakeholders that are affected by any one thing are engaged. In the last couple of days, people have sent emails regarding things like an email from Rich Holshoe regarding interactions and letters from the Vermont Commission on Native American Affairs. I also was asked about UVM graduate students wanting to unionize. And so in each of those cases, like I've dealt with on boards, just difficult conversations. And it sounds like I've been on boards that want to just kind of ignore those and pretend that they're not happening. I'm not okay with that. And I'm somebody who really likes to go and just have the conversations with all the people. Like there's a reason why these people are bringing these matters to somebody's attention, right? So sitting down and having conversations and then figuring out how to move forward and bringing in external resources to have the difficult conversations that need to happen. And then also I'm in rural Vermont. In Bradford, have had the opportunity as part of the kind of like Innovation Spaces Network that was started from having a Senate hearing in Bradford at my co-working space. We've kept meeting. So it's like 40 spaces. And then it eventually included things like UVM Center on the Office of Engagement, and now has started engaging with the Office of Rural Partnerships. And so just making sure that UVM, the amazingness of UVM, is able to actually interact with everybody from every corner of the state and beyond. So I'm happy to have discussions with people. You have my email, and you can text me, but I would love your consideration for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Priestley. We're having a little technical difficulty. We're still working on it. So we don't have any bill reports right now. So I'm gonna continue this. Says we're live. We're not actually sure we're live, but it only just happened. So, but I think we can just open it up unless you think we're really not. But it goes through this. Oh. Got it. So is Delia coming? Okay. We may not be live. Okay, so anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and open it up because this is just for bill sponsors. If anybody's looking for a bill sponsor, so you said? Okay. You do need that just in case we are live. I want to make sure everybody can hear. So Representative Brumstead.
Thank you. I have the child care bill that I've talked to lots of you about, and lots of you are on it. So thank you very much. But if anyone is worried that they might not be on it, please let me know. You're all set.
Thank you. And I think we have one more. Representative Whitman.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Hey, Dane Whitman from Bennington. I am introducing an overdose crisis response omnibus bill, I guess you could say. A lot of you know, and I'm sure your communities have been impacted, that 2020 and 2021 were record-breaking years for a fatal overdose. And this bill just contains a number of policies that seek to take steps towards reversing that trend. It's titled An Act Related to Reducing Overdoses, and I'll walk through just, there's a lot in it, so I'll just kind of touch on everything really quickly, and then happy to sit down and answer questions afterwards. It removes barriers for treatment for Vermonters on Medicaid. It increases access to syringe disposal and supports syringe service providers with increased legal protections. It modernizes our statute regarding opioid antagonists, commonly known as Narcan, and also creates parity and zoning regulations for recovery housing and other group homes. It extends the policy that we passed in 2021 to remove criminal penalties for buprenorphine, for a personal use amount of buprenorphine, which is a medication for opioid use disorder. So would love to get sponsors. Thank you to everybody who's already signed on, hoping to introduce this as soon as possible. So I'll be here afterwards if folks would like to sign on. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other? Looks like Representative Troiano has one.
Thank you, Representative Troiano from Standard. I have a bill. We've learned that, or we know that the service industry is suffering a pretty serious workforce shortage. What really occurs to me on a pretty often basis, I stay up at the Comfort Inn, and sometimes it's handy to walk down to Applebee's. And when you get into the lobby of this restaurant, there's about 15 or 20 people waiting there. And they tell you there's a 30-minute wait for a table. And you look in and there's all these empty tables. Why does that happen? Because they don't have the staff to accommodate those tables or to wait on those tables. So this bill suggests that we raise over the next year, we raise the minimum wage for tip workers to a parity of our minimum wage. It will go halfway there on July 1. And on January 1st of 2024, it will be parity with whatever the minimum wage will be at that time. Presently it's $13.15, but it will increase probably according to the CPI, a percentage of the CPI next January. So this will reach parity for tipped workers. And, you know, and when I'm told it's a 30-minute wait at Applebee's, I turn around and leave. So a lot of these chain restaurants that, you know, your average bill is maybe $20, generates a $2 or $3 tip. I talked to the barmaid one night and she said she went to work. She had 2 tables. She made $8 and went home. You cannot make a living that way. So I think it's time to pay our tipped workers a minimum wage that's parity with everyone else.
Thank you. Representative Boslam.
Hi, so I have a bill that I'm actually going to try and get electronic signatures from for instead of a paper copy. So look for that in your email. I'll be sending that out probably later today. I do have the draft from Legislative Council that I expect to be putting forward. When I decided to run for office, the single biggest reason that I wanted to run was to increase access to mental health services for individuals in crisis. I have family members who have utilized mental health services in Vermont, and at times there are not adequate choices. We had testimony in my committee recently that there are 256 mental health beds here in Vermont for people experiencing mental health difficulties and needing residential supports. 2 of them in one facility called Alyssum in Rochester, Vermont, are available to anybody statewide as a diversion. Well, not anybody, you have to meet certain criteria, but they are available to residents all over Vermont as an alternative to going into the hospital or as a step down from the hospital, so that if you're having a mental health struggle period, you don't have to go and stay for 10 or 12 days at the retreat or 6 weeks at another mental health high level facility, because you can get a break and you can go to a lower level facility, which is a more appropriate level of care. The truth is most of the beds in Vermont have a long waiting list and they're very expensive if there are alternatives available. So Alyssum, this place in Rochester, has the shortest waiting list of any of the places in the state. Right now, the waiting list is 8 days to get into Alyssum. So the bill that I'm putting forward would be proposing to build a second center like Alyssum, which would be in Southern Vermont. It costs $515,000 a year to run a residential center like that. They serve about 85 individuals a year. The executive director told me that it ends up being about $705 a bed for care in that center. And if you have a tier 1 bed in a mental health hospital situation, that ends up usually being $2,000 or more. So it's both fiscally responsible and also compassionately responsible. In terms of Vermont, we're supposed to be providing care. Our philosophy is caring for people in the least restrictive environment. And we're not able to do that right now. We have a dire lack of services available between staying home when you're in mental health crisis and going to the hospital. And this would both free up beds in the ER and also make more available levels of care available to individuals who really need that here in Vermont. So please look for my message in your inbox. I'm hoping to submit this later in the week. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to talk to you.
Thank you, Representative Boslin. Anybody else? Not seeing anyone. Okay, that would be it for us for today. Have a great week, everyone. Thank you.